Hi guys, it's Brooke here. I have a super quick favor to ask. When you have a moment, please take just a second to give this podcast a 5-star review. This will help me to continue the podcast and continue to bring these resources to the community. Thank you so much for that 5-star review.
I'm not going to know what's working
Yeah.
for my son if I do everything. I'm not going to know where did this gain, if you will, in his life to help him thrive. Where did it come from? Did it come from this? Did it come from this? Did it come from this? And I think if it's hard for you as a parent, we're speaking to parents, if it's hard for you to make that decision to not do this or wait for that, this is an important practical thing to think about. Whenever you're exploring something for your child to do for them, we'll call it a therapy, but whatever it may be, you want to know what the goals of that are. And again, back to what I said earlier, and how you'll know if you're moving forward.
Yeah.
And how you'll know if it's doing what it needs to do to help your child thrive,
Right.
to move forward, to live a dynamic life, to deal with the messy life. All those are really important things.
Hey there, it's Brooke, and welcome to Finding Hope on the Spectrum, where I have heart-to-heart conversations with parents, professionals, and autistic individuals sharing personal insight and life experiences. Together, we dive deep into supports, programs, and stories that offer inspiration, insight, and most importantly, hope for the neurodiverse community. Before we begin with today's topic, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And if you know someone who this would be helpful for, please pass it along. Remember to always stay curious, be kind, and have an open heart. All right. Well, today we are in for a real treat. We're going to be talking about something that I think is really interesting, and I haven't really talked about it on the show yet. And so we're thinking about, today and how families are raising autistic children and how often they are told that they have so many options and there's just therapies and programs and more experts and more opinions. And while choices can be empowering and it's wonderful that we've progressed so much in the field, it can also be really overwhelming. And many parents are left wondering, am I doing enough? Am I choosing the right things, right? How do you even choose that and know what's best? And so today, my guest really understands this from a perspective that's, very few people can offer. And so Kat Lee is an RDI consultant and the mother of an autistic son who's now an adult, whose journey began over 30 years ago. And that was a time when families had far fewer options and far less information and support. So today, Kat joins us to reflect on how the autism landscape has changed and what she's learned through her own parenting and therapy journey, and how families can navigate today's sea of information with clarity, confidence, and compassion for themselves. So this is a conversation that we're going to have about perspective, trust, relationships, and hope, especially for parents who feel like they're carrying the weight of every decision alone. So, Kat, I'm so grateful you're here today, and welcome to Finding Hope on the Spectrum.
Well, I very much appreciate you asking me to join you and kind of go over some history. I always say, because people say, what difference does the past make? And I said, well, it doesn't unless it helps with the present or the future. So if I can be a help for those today, I definitely want to be.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. And you have so much knowledge and experience, personal and professionally. And so I'd love for you to start with, just sharing a little bit about your journey and, as an RDI consultant. And we've had a lot of different experts on the show about RDI, but maybe you can just share it just briefly for those that don't know what it is. And then also as a mom to a son on the spectrum.
Yeah, I actually, as I was thinking about visiting with you today, and thank you again, I was thinking about that day that my husband and I went and received this diagnosis. And I can remember it. I know we're saying it's a long time ago, but when I start talking about it, I feel like I'm right back there. I think that can be how strong the impact of the words the first person to talk to you about are. And we went to a doctor at a children's clinic here. I had been recommended by a friend of ours, and he was squeezing us in. And I had my little baby, he was 2, just turned 2, in my arms, and he took us into this room. He couldn't find a room to meet with us, so he opened this door, and it was just pitch black inside. And honestly, it looked kind of creepy. And he goes, "Come in here, it'll be fine." And my son took one look at it, and he just turned and he just grabbed my neck and buried his head in my hair.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's okay, sweetie," because I was like, "Oh, surely this is going to look better in just a moment." And he turned on the light, it was toys. And so he had us sit at a children's desk, and my son kind of ran around, and he watched him a few minutes. And it was a few minutes. And he said, "He's autistic. And it looks like he's pretty severe." He was having the time of his life looking at all the toys, but he wasn't playing with them. But he was full of joy at toys, but he was just kind of running around looking at them. And he said, "And there's just not a lot you can do." And I remember my husband's hand creeping into mine and starting to hold on to me. And I said, "There must be something we can do."
Yeah.
And he said, and he was well-meaning, but he said, "No, he can go to our clinic when he turns 3, but you really need to focus on your other child." And those kind of experiences in our lives, wherever they may be, really stamp us.
Yeah.
We really don't forget them. The brain is very interesting that way, I think. And I remember thinking, that can't be true. That just can't be true. And that's one thing I would say to moms and dads who are new in this. If you hear those words, it's not true.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be really careful about, at the ripe old age of 2,
Right.
Evaluating a human being's potential. And sometimes that has to begin with us as parents, Brooke. Like, we have to be those people to say, "Okay, I know that's not true." And that's hard when a well-meaning person with lots of education and lots of experience, he was an experienced person, he was head of this study center, tells you something like that. But we just have to know and hear.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think, so I wanted to share that just in case somebody else is going. It was a long time ago for me. I think one of the words, I talked to one of my friends who also had a child diagnosed around the same time that I didn't know him before, but I came to know him. And before I visited with you all today, and I asked him how to define that time.
Yeah.
And he said scarcity. He said there just weren't services. And so we were really left to meeting each other.
Yeah.
Getting in touch with each other, which I think is easier to do today, which is wonderful. And then educating each other, and then figuring out how to get services into us from other places. And it was very challenging, just from a practical point of view, and also financially, and all of those things. So it's a very different time, and parents today have a lot more services that are available, to them almost instantly. But still, they can hear those words.
Yeah.
And they have a profound effect.
Yeah. It's surprising that it still can happen, in different degrees. But I think any kind of limiting beliefs, or limitations that are put out, I think it's just really something we have to be really careful with, because we just do not know somebody's potential. And none of us know until we give it a try and we set our expectations high. And so we've seen that in our work, and how incredible it can be to see those things, come to fruition. And so, and after you got that diagnosis, I mean, that is something, of course, you're never going to forget. That is not something that is going to leave you. I mean, I feel you've come so far, and your son is, in his journey, but even, as a mom, like, hearing that is, I feel bad for that mom that, you were back then, to receive that message, because that is just really, really heavy and not true, but also just a lot to process. And
yes.
So, that just kind of gave me the chills just to put yourself in that position of what that feels like for a parent and what you went through. And so you obviously didn't believe that and you carried on. And so let's talk about what you did after that. What was your next step in the journey?
Well, it was kind of interesting, and I'm going to sound a little bit shallow for a moment, but prior to that, I had a friend who I would have coffee with every once in a while, and she was telling me about her niece who had been diagnosed with autism and was in a program, and how well she was doing. And I would kind of be that friend going, "Oh, that's interesting," and listening, but I wasn't like invested in that particular story that much because she would just tell it to me. Well, of course, the minute I heard that, I called her.
Yeah.
And she said, "You have to meet my sister-in-law. She'll help you." And we called her and we went over there. And she was actually a great mentor. She herself was a special ed administrator and had also, I think, double majored in deaf ed. And her daughter had been diagnosed, and she had brought this team of people from California who specialized in ABA, behavior analysis, and said, "This has really helped my daughter. It might help you. I can give you their contact information." And she really took the time. So I think that's another lesson.
Yeah.
Is whenever we can take the time to help other parents. And what I really remember about her mentoring is she wasn't ever telling. She was just talking to us. She looked at him. I remember he was in her house running around, and she looked at his face, and she had a lot of experience with kids with challenges. And she said, she looked at him, he looked at her real sweetly, and she's like, you just never know what's in there. And so just having that encouragement and support, and just being able to be that to each other in the beginning or through the journey, really honestly, I think is really important. So as my friend noted, there was a scarcity in services, and so I got some books and I started teaching myself the basics of how to get started in an ABA program. And I started sitting down with my son, and eventually a friend of ours helped us, and my mother-in-law helped us, and we saw a change in him within a month. He was very charming. He still is very charming. Very good at getting his way, charmingly, but he was just so dysregulated. Like he just didn't know what to do with himself. So I think just the learning to just sit and listen, and just that really helped him. And we definitely saw a decrease in his, what we'll call his distraughtness. He had gone from this really happy-go-lucky little baby to distraught. Something happened in his brain, and we don't know. We're just one of those families who said things were looking good and then they weren't. Yeah. And we have very specific things that he was doing that were amazing, and then all of a sudden they weren't there. And we didn't know what's going on with him. But that distraughtness went away, and it never quite came back at that point. I mean, whenever a human being has effects on their understanding of language, it's very traumatic for them. And so, we couldn't remove that trauma from him, but we could help him know that we were there and that we were there for him and that he could trust that. And I think that was really important, that we were forced into that involvement. Right. But I am glad that we were. Yeah. Because I think if we hadn't been, he might not have known what to do with himself. I mean, he was so then eventually we had a team that worked with us, and I kept working with him. My husband was working at his job, and that was kind of our journey. Yeah. And we saw progress with him, and I'm very big, you'll probably hear me say it a couple of times, knowing what the goals are. We had a consultant come in and set our goals, knowing what the goals are, and knowing how you'll know when your goals are reached. Yeah. I think that's so important for a parent. Yes. Because not only do you want to have goals, but you want to know, how will I know when I've done that? Because I know my background is kind of funny, but it's radio and TV, and I've done radio morning shows most of my life. Yeah. And I didn't know anything about child development. So really having professionals willing to tell you, here are the goals, here's how we'll know when we've reached the goals. It sounds simplistic, but to someone who had no background in that was really important. Yeah. So kind of when I take my time transporter and go back,
Yeah.
I think that was really important to my involvement with it, because if I hadn't known that, I wouldn't have really known how to be a part,
Right. And I think that's so important that the parents are, just have a high level participation. We've seen that, in RDI, that the parents that are, heavily involved, you're going to see more progress.
Yeah, and that's, you already know, I know, you can read my mind, but that's what I loved about RDI.
Yeah.
Because there were two things that brought me to RDI when my son was about 11. Well, there were really three things. One, a mentor of mine who was our consultant at the time, who's really I would call her a strong, when I say critical, I mean good critical person who could analyze something if it's really working for the kids. She had heard Dr. Gutstein, and she had gone to one of his trainings, and she told me that, I really needed to look into it. So that was number one. But when I did look into it, the fact that Dr. Gutstein and Dr. Shealy had this beautiful parent program that was designed for parents, that took into account, who we were as people, how to look at our obstacles that we might have as parents as something that we could work with, because human beings have obstacles, but could do that in a compassionate yet practical way that felt comfortable. Their program for parents was just so unique in that way. Mm-hmm. And then how they'd taken all these little big, I like to call them that, little big developmental steps, and find out what was missing for the children. And so it's a little bit cliche, I know, to say it was like a missing piece, but I knew it was for me as a guide. Even though I'd been helping to teach my son all those years, I knew for me that way of thinking was missing. And for him, it helped me figure out what was missing for him. So, and it also helped me know what was working and what was working for him too, because this program does that too, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It spotlights the strengths of what you're doing and the decisions that are working for you as a parent. So it does both for us. Yeah. But that's what drew me to it after those years. And it was kind of like we look at it as ABA impacted our life, and then RDI came in and was just a huge impact as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And then let's talk about how you became an RDI consultant. So you've taken it a step further from that experience. So share a little bit more about that.
Well, I felt a heart for helping other parents. I worked as what they would now call an RBT, but I was ABA therapist for a couple of wonderful families and wonderful little babies. Uh-huh. And I love that. I love those memories. But what I really felt like was the empowerment of parents and being able to be those parents that they plan to be, being able to have the family life that they had hoped to have, being able to know that their child at the ripe old age of 9 was not set in stone, that he could still grow, that she could still learn to thrive, that those things were there. That for me really made the decision not too difficult to decide that's the way I wanted to go, and to guide parents. And of course, as I say, the RDI program itself is so well put together for training even consultants, as you know, to do that work. It's rigorous, but it is needful that they really help us to be able to work with families. And as a parent, I always said, I don't know that I'm the easiest to work for. I used to say, I think back of those times, like I'd be sitting in these meetings with the consultant who we brought in and some team members asking these questions. And it's just different when it's your heart, Brooke. Yeah. Your babies are your heart, as you know. Yes. And when it's your heart, you're asking these questions. And sometimes with our first consultant, who's an amazing person, and I learned so much from him, and this was in ABA, of course, and he would just look at me like, how am I going to answer her question? But I think that's because our questions as parents are part of our heart for our children. Yeah. And I think that's what's so wonderful about our program, because we're all about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a beautiful thing. And, I think it makes me think of what you were just sharing about the goals. And I had a client meeting earlier, and we're in the process of writing new goals, and we're at a place where we can really collaborate, and they can really come to the table with ideas, and they really are competent and successful in doing so, and they understand their child and his needs and what they want for him with this outcome of having a high quality of life. And it's just a beautiful place to be, where you can really spend that time collaborating with parents and lifting them up and showing them how amazing they are, and they're experts of their child at the end of the day. They are, and they should be honored and given that opportunity to feel that, even despite the challenges.
But we don't want that taken away from our parents.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's hard being a parent, period.
Right. Yes.
I know, it just is. I know it's wonderful, and all those big, wonderful words, but it's also challenging.
Yeah.
And I think that's another really great thing about what we do, because we help our parents examine their decisions, and not to judge themselves, but if this is working for you, great. But if it's not, you can change your mind.
Yeah.
And you can make a different decision.
Yes.
So don't feel trapped within a decision you made or a choice you made. And so many times I've had that conversation. It was so freeing. It's like, really? I'm like, no, you can make this decision, but you can change your mind.
Right.
On this decision. Sometimes we just need to hear those things.
Yeah. Somebody to give us permission.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not set in stone. So I know. So I really appreciate that. And for those that haven't heard of RDI, it stands for Relationship Development Intervention. And we'll share some more information about resources as well. But, well, fantastic. Well, let's talk about today. We talked a little bit about, 30 years ago and how challenging it was. You really had to figure this out without the resources. And that mentorship was so incredible. I love that you had family you could rely on and just be in relationship with another person that understood and could be there as a support. And I think that's still so incredible to actively have parents be a part of some kind of other, support group or parent resource, or, being able to connect with other families. I think it's just really empowering, right? We all need that to feel connected, that we're not alone. Go ahead. Did you want to share more about that?
We, at that time, autism was, just to kind of put it in a nutshell,
it
was 1 in 10,000. So you felt like, what? And that's what they were telling. Well, it is 1 in 10,000. That's the data point and all of that. And it was an awkward time. I mean, I was thinking back, before talking to you, like, it almost doesn't feel, this part doesn't feel real sometimes, because of course we had my friend I've told you about, and then I went to a meeting of a autism advocacy group, and I met a woman there who I've known for years as well now, and her daughter had been diagnosed, and then she knew somebody, and I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there was a person like 3 miles from me who got in contact with me, and then there was a person 2 miles from me, and literally I'm doing my hand gestures, because literally my neighborhood, here's over here, and then here's back here.
Wow. And
they're all contacting each other, and I feel the need to say, these were kids that were, I'm not into labels, but at all, I think they can limit our view of the potential of children. But I would say these kids, several of them were very severely impacted. And so this wasn't a overdiagnosis or misdiagnosis or anything like that
Right.
people like to talk about. And so that was pretty profound, because I'm supposed to be 1 in 10,000, and what is everybody doing here?
Right.
Then we started kind of building our network, and it was all over the Metroplex, just kind of grew. So we started one of the first chapters, not the first, but one of the first chapters of FEET, and we call FEET North Texas, as a group, just so we could bring all of our collaboration education, what we knew as parents, together, and just have some place.
Yeah.
So as many people as we could reach out to, we would do that.
Right.
Again, today, there's so many great ways to do that. But I still really value that time because we were really working together to help each other, not telling each other what to do. It was this need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a good point, just to be there to share information and to connect, but not be in a position where you're getting direct instruction on what to do, because it is such a sensitive process to decide, and that's really what that friendship and that connection is all about, is just being there to hold space for each other and share resources. And feet, is feet still around? I haven't heard of feet in a while. That was pretty common back then.
They still have the chapter here, and there's Feet Houston still active. I get a lot of information from them. I don't know about the rest of the country, but
okay, great.
I know those are still doing things.
That's amazing. That chapter that you helped to start is still there.
Yes, they're still blowing and going.
Wow, that's great. I love it. Well, let's talk about today now. Let's kind of fast forward, and families now face so many different types of choices and therapies and suggestions and programs and what they should do and should not do. And, how do you see this abundance of resources helping families, and how can it sometimes hurt families?
There are a lot of voices, and there's the positive side, that there are a lot of great professional people who can help our children, and there's more experience based. I mean, we know that we learn from experiences, and so there are people who've been working with the children for a long period of time now. There are lots of emphasis in college programs to prepare new professionals to work with the children and with adults. There are close services. So we would drive all of us all over the Metroplex or whatever we had to do.
Yeah.
And now parents can find things, at least in our area, very close by. Mm-hmm. And I think all of that helps with that energy you have as a parent, with that just trying to get your family where they need to be. Those are very practical things that are so challenging when you don't have those things for you.
Yeah.
However, voices all at the same time can be very overwhelming. So I know from visiting with my families that it's a lot coming at them. It's kind of like hearing lots of different music all at the same time. And one piece may be very beautiful, but how can you hear it over the other, which also may be great and fun to dance to. But when it's all at the same time, it can be noise, and to where you want to put your hands over your ears. So I think that's got to be challenging, and just to kind of be able to, and we talk about the need to slow down.
Yeah.
Part of the thing that is a struggle when it comes to slowing down is that energy speeds us up. So energy comes from those voices, and those voices may be online, in the written word, in the visual word, just seeing pictures or videos of audio only, just podcasts and such in our ears.
Yeah.
And it all becomes noise.
Yeah.
This person's doing this, should I do that? This person's doing that, should I do that? Oh, I'm not doing that, am I not doing the right thing?
Right.
Which then even talking about it makes me start feeling a little bit anxious.
Yeah.
Because again, going back to, this is our heart. This is our baby. Our baby, whether they're 20 or 2,
right.
They're still our baby. And so we want to make the right choices. So being able to slow down, and before I say anything else, I'm going to raise my hand and say I'm a big hypocrite in this area because I have a hard time slowing down. I'm an energy ball or something, according to my family. so when I tell you I have to slow down, believe me, I understand the challenges in that. I'm just not that. We're all different people, and that's really hard for me. But it's really necessary because otherwise, as soon as you think you're hearing this one voice and that sounds great, this other one comes in and makes you feel like you're doing the wrong thing here. And then this one comes on top of, or this one feels like something you left out. And that's just not healthy for you as a parent.
Yeah.
It can make you feel desperate. It can make you feel like you just can't make a decision. It can feel like, I hate to say it because it's so wrong, but like you're bad because you're not doing what this family is doing. When all of our children are unique, beautiful people, and we have to do what's best for them, which is something I learned very early in the journey. I had to look at him as his sweet little individual self and what he needed us to do. And that might not look like what everybody else was doing. And that's hard sometimes. But you can learn from other people. You can gather that knowledge, and some things fit and sometimes things don't. But if those voices are overwhelming you, it's really hard to make a decision like that.
This show is brought to you by Therapeutic Approach to Growth. Therapeutic Approach to Growth helps families with relationship and behavioral needs. Their holistic programs are individualized to honor and respect each family and their autistic son or daughter's sense of self through programs such as relationship development intervention, naturalistic ABA, and animal-assisted services. If you're finding yourself frustrated or discouraged with your current behavioral programs and would like to see more long-term meaningful growth for you and your family, then contact TAG today at www.tagforgrowth, that's TAGFORGROWTH.com, to learn more about how to schedule a consultation or how they can offer you the help your family needs, whether in person, remotely, or in a school setting. Again, that's www.tagforgrowth.com. Yeah. I mean, there's so much that you shared that we could flesh out. And I think one of the things that stands out to me is just the value and the importance of slowing down. So let's talk a little bit more about why that is so important. You know, in addition to what you shared about, you know, having a hard time making decisions. I had a family this week that said, I can't do this other therapy they've been wanting to do, which I think would be a great therapy for their child when they feel ready. It would be very complimentary of what they're already doing, but they just can't get to it right now. And that's okay. You know, that I was so proud of them for making that decision, because it didn't feel good to not be doing the therapy, because it's the one that they were working with the consultant. And so they were going to be the ones doing the activities. And then they weren't feeling successful, you know, and I think, you know, they know that when the time is right, they would like to get back to it, but it's just not right now. And that's perfectly okay. And I think that can be really hard for some families. For this family, I was like, wow, you guys are ahead of the game. I just can't do it right now. I'm going to say no. And that's, you know, that's a good limit to set for yourself in that moment. Yeah. But also for the families that are in the position of doing it all and racing from one place to another, trying to do it all. Let's talk about why we feel, you know, in as RDI consultants, and maybe, you know, as a parent as well, perspective on why it's so important to slow down.
I think you just raised such a great topic for that, which is the kind of concept of doing it all, you know, and I remember all those years ago, a really great friend of mine and her husband. I remember I had lunch with them, and he said, we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. We're going to do everything that we can. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, I was new in all this, you know, I'm like, I just can't do that. Like, that's just not going to work, because I'm not going to know what's working for my son if I do everything. I'm not going to know where did this gain, if you will, in his life to help him thrive. Where did it come from? Did it come from this? Did it come from this? Did it come from this? And I think if it's hard for you as a parent, we're speaking to parents, if it's hard for you to make that decision to not do this or wait for that, this is an important practical thing to think about. Mm-hmm. Whenever you're exploring something for your child to do for them, we'll call it a therapy, but whatever it may be, you want to know what the goals of that are, And again, back to what I said earlier, and how you'll know if you're moving forward.
Yeah.
And how you'll know if it's doing what it needs to do to help your child thrive,
Right.
to move forward, to live a dynamic life, to deal with a messy life. All those are really important things. And if you're doing too many things at one time, and I've seen it so many times, parents don't know where, like, I don't know if it's that they'll say to me, I don't know if it's this, or this that's helping them.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I shouldn't do or what I should do. One of the reasons is you're doing so much.
Yeah.
But when you commit yourself to one area and you see, and you know what those goals are, and you see the progress, you hear the progress, whatever the case may be, then it helps you make your decisions. It's back to that informs you. Is this something that we need to keep or not? Can we add this now or not? And that's what we call a process. Whereas if you just start, as that sweet dad said, putting all these eggs in a basket, it's hard to know what's helping. And that very, very element itself can cause your child not to seem like they're thriving because it's so much. I love what Dr. Gutstein says about this, Brooke, that people who have neurological challenges, one of the things that can be hardest on them is when we are having them do so much. We have to think about that they're compromised for whatever reason that they're compromised. And it's very overwhelming. So even doing so much, right, can be something that causes us not to be reaching our goals.
Right.
But I won't say those are easy decisions. I know they're not easy decisions. But trying to take an approach of it's not time now, let me see what this is doing, let me hold on to this, okay, we're going to keep this, then now we'll do this, is much more productive in most cases than just everything. Gosh. And for the families too.
Right.
Because you're going to be, your resources as a parent get exhausted. I'm going here, and I'm going here, and then I have this child and this child's trying to do this, but I've got to go pick up this child here. That's hard enough as a parent, but when you're adding on top of things, therapies, with everything else, I get tired, honestly, thinking about it. It's exhausting.
Absolutely. And I think what I love that you shared, in addition to the value of slowing down, is that when you heard that other parents say that, you trusted your own gut and your instincts and was like, I can't do that. And, I think that's so powerful because it could be tempting to be like, me too, I'm going to do that too. Because that sounds like you're the go-getter. You're going to, you're going to do it all.
I love that family. I mean, they're one of the closest families I've known. Love them so much and admired them so much. Nothing to do with that. You just have to know what you need to be doing and that they're doing what they need to do, and they had a very different circumstance. They actually had 2 children very severely affected, and they were doing the best they could do, and they were constantly going in and out of that crisis state, which we talk a lot about in RDI, which is another thing. It's hard to get out of crisis state of mind when you're a hamster on a wheel. I mean, it's that imagery is really good for me. It's like you just kind of end up doing this, and you don't want to do that, but that's what's happening to you. So, you're right. You can have really, along this journey, lots of people that impact you, but it won't always be that what they're doing is what you need to do for you and yours. Right.
It has to feel right for your family and for your own child, but also your family and what you have available to you and what feels right to you. I love that. But yes, just to trust that, be able to trust that inner voice, of what feels right, and when you're receiving the information, and make those decisions based on, that parental.
I'm saying all this with a really calm demeanor. But it's much later. I would not want anybody to go, wow, she's just so, like, no, I just told you I have a lot of energy. So my mind would just be like this when people would say things to me. I'm just like, well, am I doing the right thing? Are we doing the right thing? That's loving your child and wanting the best for them. So I'm no way saying that's easy.
Right.
And it, it's challenging, and especially if someone's saying, well, you better do this or this is going to happen. I mean, those are some of the worst feedback you can get as a parent, even though it may be very well meaning.
Right.
Because you're like, well, what do I know? I would go back to that place a lot. What do I know? But I had to know that I knew him and I knew us.
Yeah.
And I knew what we needed to do. But it can be really hard. I can sit here and say it calmly.
Oh, yeah.
But I can tell you, even talking about it, I can feel that welling up inside. So
Yeah.
anybody who's hearing that going, wow, it seems so hard to be, I understand that feeling of hearing, again, wonderful, loving voices telling you maybe you should be doing this too. And maybe something you should, on the other side of that, you should be listening. If I hadn't been listening to my mentor, I might not be an RDI.
Right.
So I think that's the hard piece. It's like you want to be listening, but you got to take it in, give it thought, and pursue it in a way that is manageable for you.
Yes, very well said. It's so true. And I mean, I feel that way. I have, teenage daughters, and I mean, it's constant, that inner voice of, is this the best thing for them? Is it not? It's just, parenting can be very tricky and hard. And
yes.
In general. And it is not an easy thing to do, for sure. But, I love how you just expressed it. It was great. And were there ever moments when you questioned your choices, like you pulled out of something, or you felt like, oh, this isn't right, that were kind of emotionally not working?
Well, I think I hate to say it's inevitable, but I think it's inevitable in life.
Yeah.
Where you've made choices and then you start questioning the choices. And I've made choices that looked really strong and they didn't work out. It was really important to me for him to be treated as a unique individual, but I wanted him to experience life from birth. and so I tried to find schools that would accept him with us having a lot of input. And I can remember one school when he was in that middle school age, and it was time to leave the school where he was, and school is a whole nother topic we could talk an hour about. And they had talked to the principal, they'd accepted him, and he was excited to go to this new place. I'd shown it to him. This is going to sound like a really rough story, but prepare everybody. And then I got a phone call. We were literally leaving from the school, and it was the principal, and she actually left a message because we were getting ready, so I didn't realize it was her, so I went to check it. And she said, I'm so sorry, but they had a board meeting last night and decided that your son cannot come to these classes. And I was like, I can't believe you're calling me when we're supposed to be leaving to go to school. I mean, you're a parent, and you're like, oh. And it just turned out that I've always known he's on his own journey, and they've been very willing to. He was a little bit older. He's going to be in a class a couple levels down, and the parents just didn't want an older child in the class. They wanted all the grades to be just a certain age. And the principal hadn't checked with the board, and which they had totally the right to. But then you're like, why did I not see this as a parent, that would be an issue? But then I inform myself, and I recommend that you do this as a parent continually. You can't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know that the principal didn't have the authority to make that decision.
Right.
She was so, yes, he can come here, and yes, but I'm in the kitchen looking at my son who's all ready to go in his new uniform, going, how am I going to tell him this?
Yeah.
How am I going to explain this to him? Because I'm not telling him that.
Right. Right.
Ever. And so, and how do I handle that with grace? Because there is no point in getting angry at them.
Right.
This is over. He is not going to go there. Yeah. I'm not having even fighting that battle because they're not healthy for him. I realize that now. So you have to give yourself as a parent grace when you realize that a choice that you made didn't work out.
Yeah.
And you can't know what you don't know. And that's something I've learned, or I don't know, I continue to learn would be a better way to say it.
Yeah.
sometimes people want to talk about, I wish I'd known, or I wish I'd that, and I'm always like, they'll laugh at me. Brooke, I'll say, well, are you a psychiatrist?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, no. And I'll be like, oh, you're a guidance counselor. No. I'll be like, so how would you know this?
Yeah.
And then I like to bring levity, and they'll sometimes laugh. They'll be like, well, I don't guess I could have. And I'll be like, yeah, you can't know everything.
Right.
Nobody can, no matter what they think. So,
Yeah.
I hate to hear parents regretting things they didn't know and feeling guilt about that.
Right.
Because we move forward with what we know now.
Yes.
And that's powerful. It's a lot more powerful than people give it credit, I think.
I agree. And it's such a good example of having a growth mindset. Also easier said than done sometimes when you're reflecting on your child. But it can be really empowering too, just to take off that weight. Like, I should have known. Well, no, you shouldn't have known, because how would you have known? And it's not possible.
How would you know? I mean, I get people ask me, do you wish you'd started RDI earlier? And I'm like, well, it wasn't there. So,
yeah.
That's, and this is just, maybe it's my personality, but there's no point in a regret of something that
right
couldn't be. And I did find out about it. It did have a big impact on his life. And no, he wasn't 2, he was 12, but it had a big impact on his life. So
yeah,
I do think that you learn from your past.
Yes.
So you look at things, choices, as you mentioned, or things you didn't know, and now you know. The value they have is how you go forward. But any kind of, I don't know, what I call false guilt, where you couldn't have known and you couldn't do anything, and even if you could, you didn't know you should.
Yeah.
I hate thinking that people hurt like that.
Yeah.
I use the word hate because I do. It's because I know it really keeps them up at night.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a big impact. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's so important to mention too that that's another thing that a lot of people say, like, I wish I would have started this earlier, or, and there's still a little bit of a misconception that there's some age range. It's like a magical age where you start things, or where the brain's not going to be flexible enough to learn or grow. Or I still hear that from time to time. And people, even at like a 12-year-old, might feel like, oh, I'm starting so late. And they have a lifetime to learn. Your child has a lifetime to learn. It's never going to stop. So you start when you start, and it's never too late. You can be 20 and start, and it's not too late.
Because we do that as human beings. I think maybe we forget, or maybe we're clouded by emotion and those voices, but I'm the world's worst black belt. I decided my kids were taken, so I decided I would take, and at 40, I became a black belt.
Thing.
You look up world's worst black belt, my picture is there. But I learned a new thing, which I can still think about, and I have knowledge about when people bring it up. So I learned that later in life. I learned to stand up paddleboard later in life. I killed myself in a swimming pool, not literally, but I might have kept falling off the board over and over until I learned that. But we learn things later in life.
Yes.
And we can learn things later in life. And if I can become the world's worst black belt, I'm quite confident in the potential that children have who have vulnerabilities or obstacles in their life, whatever that is, that's keeping them from thriving, that they can continue to grow in life. It's not just as Dr. Sheely says, a pie in the sky dream or hope. It's real.
Yeah.
We continue to develop as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about, when families come to you overwhelmed by information, what's the first thing you help them to do to regain that clarity and that focus?
Well, one of the first things we do, and again, I believe we're so well trained by our mentors, Dr. Steve Gutstein and Dr. Rochelle Sheely, is we look at the whole family, and then we look at the individual parent and where are they. We're not judging, but if we visit with them and we feel like you as a parent are in a state of crisis, that and crisis can be at any age. It could be your child is 2 or 32.
Yeah.
Then we try to help you realize that, because some people realize it once I start talking to them about it, and other parents think they're not, but along the way realize they are. And some parents, depending on what they've been through, are not. But we want to make sure that parents themselves are okay. Mm-hmm. Because if we're not okay, our kids aren't okay.
Yeah.
And so many parents, what they care about is my child and moving my child forward. But we do start with the guides. And if we need to refer out for help for parents, we do that. As you know, we have so many consultants in so many fields. So they're in RDI, but they also have another practice they do. And so if we're not counselors or psychologists or therapists, then we'll have people that we can refer to. After that, it's understanding. Mm-hmm. I think understanding what autism is and what it's not. Yeah. Is so important. It gave me a lot of clarity, even after I'd been on that journey for a while. Right. That here's what it is, and here's what it is when it's impacting a person to not live a thriving life. Yeah. Here's what it is. If you have a child, because you're coming to me, there's some obstacle, there's something that is not happening that you think will give your child their best life. Mm-hmm. What is the obstacle there? What is going on with them? What is it? And so we start understanding that, because there's some things for children that really aren't autism. Like my son has had, I think, what would have been called now a profound language disorder. Mm-hmm. That is something else that happened in his brain. Mm-hmm. And all the professionals that have known him for years and work with him all know that at this point. Like, that's separate and apart from the other. Now, maybe nobody knows what happened in his brain, his sweet little brain, but that's been a different thing that we've had to address for him. Right. The things that were keeping him from living a thriving life and being growth seeking and living a dynamic life, those are the things that RDI bring to the table, but those are the things that the children I work with and families I work with need me to work with them. And helping parents understand that. So I'd say making sure we're not in crisis and then moving on to understanding, that's where we've got to. Understanding is so powerful. Yeah. And I've told parents, even if you just go through understanding, you're going to feel so much more like you can make decisions. Yeah, definitely. When you understand the why, why your child's responding the way they are, and that just makes more sense than feeling like it's a behavior to solve, or to change. It's, really understanding on a deeper level what's going on. And, it gives you so much more perspective. So, yes. Now, what questions do you think families should be asking themselves before choosing a therapy or intervention? Wow. That's a challenging question. I know. This is one of my favorites. I figured that. I'm just blurting today, but I was never comfortable with the question, what do you want for your child? Mm-hmm. Because well-meaning people, again, I want everybody to know, well-meaning people would ask me that question. I was like, I'm going to sound like the most sarcastic person. I'd be like, well, what do you think I want for my child? I want what people want for their children. Yeah. They want them to have a fulfilling life. They want them to have what's meaningful life to them. They want them to have a strong family life. We have obstacles in life that interfere with those things. My dad died when I was 4 months old. My mom never remarried. It was just me and my sister and my mom. My mom, as a single mom in the 60s, had a lot of obstacles. So obstacles happen to us to attempt to rob us of our joy with our family, to attempt to, it feels like that. It feels almost like an active thing they're doing, but what did my mom want for us? What do I want for my son? What do I want for my daughter? As this happened as a family. And so I never liked the question because it seemed kind of obvious to me. But the truth is we do need to think about that when we're trying to make choices. Because we have to think, where do we fall in their life? What was our vision of parenting? Because that's different for parents depending on who they are and where they're from and what they've been thinking about in their life, which is a very big topic, and it's not for anybody else to tell you what that is, because what that is for you is okay, and what it is. It sounds like I'm talking in a circle there, but it's that simple. So you have to try to slow down and identify what that is, and then what will you do to try to reach that? What do you need to do to reach that goal or goals? That's how you make decisions. Will this help with that?
Right.
Will this help with that? Because if it won't move you in that direction, then it may not be something it's time to do right now.
Yeah.
Because the only thing I would say is there can be, I suppose I would call them fun things to do that your child might just enjoy, and don't rule those things out because they don't always look like the most productive thing. One thing that comes to mind is some of my clients have done equine therapy. And if it's just brought joy and growth in the life, there should be no just in front of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, that's a pretty big deal for a human being in life, right?
Right.
And so I loved horses growing up. I didn't get a lot of opportunity to ride, but when I did, it was really special. So why did I do that? Because not because I'm a horse person. I would like to have been in another existence, but
you still can be.
I still can be. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
It's my next thing. But that's okay. And I also would say don't rule those things out with that as a reason.
Yeah.
To enjoy and growth. Because we do that too. Sometimes there's something that would be fun, but we've got to do this. So to the fun thing, so it's not easy because time is a resource that is a frenemy. It's there and it's great, and it's also limited, and that is a real struggle. I mean, I think a lot of struggles, Brooke, actually do come down to time.
Yes.
And that's why I put so much value on, with my families, on how are we using our time, because it's a great thing, but we don't feel like we have enough of it. It brings that pressure on us about our decision making. So
yeah,
I think those are the things you have to think about as a family.
Yeah.
And I think even the question that I don't really love is a question we have to think about.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's great. I mean, it gives you a good focal point and compass of the direction that you want to go in. And that's going to be unique to every family. And so I think I love that we do mission previews and help the families kind of visualize what that would look like, a day in the life that they would like to see. And what does that look like, and what does that feel like? And help be that, create that as the focus point, as we're moving through our RDI goals. And I found that to be really helpful, especially when we get to celebrate that they come to life. That's my favorite. So, okay. So now you've watched your son grow into adulthood. This has been quite a journey. What brings you the most pride when you reflect on this journey?
Well, in life, a lot of people, and a lot of people you admire, but I just can't tell you how much I respect and admire him, because we talk a lot about what parents go through, but what he has gone through as a person since he was a baby, I'll be teary about it, obviously.
Yeah.
And he just is so resilient in the face of challenges, in the face of things that he wants to do but that are hard for him. He loves to go to concerts, and it's overwhelming for his hearing. He still has struggles with things if they're loud. I mean, but he manages it, and he wants to go so much. So we work on how to manage that and enjoy the concert while I'm putting stuff in my ears. And I remember when we went and I was like putting the things in my ears, and he had them in his ears and he took them out, and I said, "Don't you want to wear those?" "No, I don't." I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm going to go deaf. But just that desire to grow, which, he's been through a lot in his little short life, really. He's 33, and as you said, life is long.
Yeah.
But I do admire that, and because, as much as we talk about what we go through as parents, which we do, our children go through an awful lot to try to get to those lives that they so want to live.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to admire there.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to be able to look back and the whole experience of this journey and all the accomplishments and the challenges and everything that came with it, and to end, in this place. And it's incredible. And
I don't want parents to give up. When he was 2, he got terrified of those little rides at the grocery store. And I mean, you couldn't even go and buy one. He was just, and we didn't know why. He had no idea. As I said, we didn't know anything about anything, as I like to say. And we just decided, I'm not ashamed to say that we're Disney adults. I'll make an announcement. And we'd had some of our best times there as a couple. And so we, thought, well, we want our family to be able to do that. And so we just started we just stand near one.
Yeah.
And then we would get closer. I mean, it was literally this plan that we put together. And then, maybe we could touch it now, just for a second, and I mean, we just built this whole elaborate thing. It just became, and it wasn't obsessive. It was just every, couple of times a week, we'd make sure we were near one.
Yeah.
It's trying to drag me on the wildest roller coasters now. And I like roller coasters.
Yeah.
But, 8 inversions and 6 loops and upside down over water. I'm just, I'm like, maybe why don't we save that one for next time?
Yes.
I wouldn't have imagined that would be possible. And you might say, well, if he didn't like it, would you make him on? No, that was not our approach. Our approach is he won't allow himself to experience it, to know if he likes it. I have friends who do not like parks like that. They do not like rides. That's great. We're all special individuals.
Yeah.
But until he had an opportunity to actually have the experience. And I can remember that day where he got in one of those and we actually could put a quarter in there. And he just realized he was having the time of his life. It was like, I got there. Not everybody might. Right. But it's just not to give up. And especially on those things that as a family are important to you. Yeah. As a family. Right. Not everything does every family member want to do. That's life right there. Yeah. But to not give up on exploring it. Yes. And on the possibilities of that. As honestly, from the beginning, you've heard me, we were encouraged to do. And I know that professionals who say those things don't know that's what they're doing, but they are encouraging you to give those things up. And I would encourage you to think about possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know what life can bring and what our kids are capable of until you give it a try. And I just think that's fantastic. I love that story. And I can visualize you guys on those roller coasters now, screaming away. Having a great
time. Exactly what's happening. I'm screaming away. You begged it.
Oh, well, that's a great way to end this conversation. I just loved chatting with you and learning more about your story. And I've known you for a long time, but I never heard, your full story personally. So this was a real treat for me. So thank you so much for being on today. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Brooke. It's my pleasure.
Yes. And how can people find you?
Well, the website's real easy to remember, I think. It's www.autismtexas.com. Okay. So that one's not hard to remember. And then I am one of the remaining members of the AOL Club. We're very special. Wow. of people who won't change.
Yeah.
K181216@aol.com.
Okay, perfect. And I will include that in the show notes as well. And thank you again. It was fantastic chatting with you.
Thanks. Thanks, Brooke.
I'm dancing on the edge again. The wind is calling my name. I'm dancing on the edge again. This time I'm not looking back, babe. You can change me, you can tell me down. I'll leave echoes in every place I find. I'll break the molds with rebels mind. I'm a hurricane of free, born mind.
The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only. The content shared is based on the experiences, opinions, and perspectives of the hosts and their guests and should not be construed as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment recommendations. The discussions and topics covered are intended to foster understanding and awareness of autism therapies, but are not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Before making any decisions regarding therapies or treatments, we strongly encourage you to consult with a qualified healthcare provider who can provide personalized recommendations based on your unique circumstances. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree that the hosts, guests, and producers are not responsible for any consequences, damages, or outcomes arising from the use or application of any information during the show.